In a village on the brink of destruction, young Kofi discovers a magical drum that can control nature. With a ruthless warlord approaching, Kofi must decide if he can trust the drum's power, or if true strength lies in the hearts of his people. In a small, forgotten village nestled between dense forests and rolling hills, there lived a boy named Kofi. The village was a quiet one, its people struggling day by day to make ends meet. Kofi's family, like many others, was poor. His clothes were worn, his shoes full of holes, and yet, he carried within him a heart full of warmth and generosity. Every morning, he would wander through the woods, gathering firewood or searching for berries to help feed his family. Though he had little, Kofi never complained. His kindness and optimistic spirit made him beloved by all, despite the hardships that surrounded him. One day, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Kofi ventured further into the forest than usual. The trees were older here, their gnarled branches reaching toward the heavens as if they had stories to tell. The forest seemed to hum with an energy that Kofi had never felt before. As he walked deeper, he stumbled upon a large, ancient tree. Its trunk was thick, and its roots twisted in strange patterns, almost like they were hiding something. Curious, Kofi knelt by the tree and noticed something half buried beneath the soil, a large, worn-out drum. It was made from wood so old it looked as if it had been there for centuries. The skin of the drum was stretched tightly, and though it appeared damaged, there was a strange, faint glow around it. Kofi's hands trembled with excitement as he reached down and touched the drum. The moment his fingers brushed the surface, he felt an electric charge run through his body. It was as if the drum had recognized him, chosen him. Without thinking, Kofi pulled it free from the earth, brushing the dirt off the surface. He gave it a tentative tap with his fingers, and to his astonishment, a deep, rhythmic sound resonated from the drum. It was a sound unlike anything he had ever heard, rich, powerful, and strangely comforting. The air around him seemed to shift, and a soft breeze rustled the leaves above. Kofi stared at the drum, puzzled but strangely drawn to it. He knew deep down that this was no ordinary instrument. He had discovered something magical, but the question remained, what was this drum, and why had it chosen him? As the days passed, Kofi could not shake the feeling that the drum was calling him. It whispered secrets to him in his dreams, urging him to discover its true power. But he also knew that in a village like his, where every resource was scarce, the villagers would never understand the significance of such an object. So he kept the drum hidden, storing it in a small hut at the edge of the village, where no one could find it. Meanwhile, the village was beginning to suffer. The rains, which had once come regularly to nourish the crops, had not arrived for months. The soil had turned dry, cracked, and barren. The elders consulted their ancient scrolls, but they could find no solution. The once vibrant village now seemed to be withering under the harsh sun. Children grew thin, and the air was heavy with the weight of worry. One evening, as the villagers sat around the fire, a shadow loomed over the horizon. It was the dreaded army of King Bakari, a ruthless warlord known across the land for his cruelty. The villagers had heard whispers of his coming, but no one was prepared for the terror he would bring. King Bakari sought to conquer every village in his path, enslaving those he encountered and leaving nothing but destruction in his wake. His soldiers were fierce, and his methods even more brutal. Kofi knew the village had no chance against such a powerful force. With no weapons or army to defend them, the villagers were at the mercy of the tyrant. As the news of the approaching army spread, panic gripped the people. They gathered together in fear, unsure of what to do or where to go. It was in this moment of desperation that Kofi made a decision. He knew the drum had the power to save them, but he also knew that using it was dangerous. The magic within the drum could be unpredictable. Yet, as the shadows of war loomed closer, Kofi felt an unshakable sense of responsibility. The village needed him, and the drum was their only hope. Kofi's heart raced as he silently promised that he would do whatever it took to protect his people, even if it meant risking everything. The night before King Bakari's army was set to arrive, the village lay silent, the air thick with fear. Kofi could feel the weight of his decision pressing on his chest, and though the villagers spoke in hushed voices of escape or surrender, he knew that flight would not save them. The soldiers would chase them down, destroy their homes, and enslave them anyway. No, there had to be another way. Kofi spent hours pacing outside his hut, staring at the drum hidden inside. The glow it emitted when he touched it seemed to beckon him closer, as if urging him to act. It was then that he realized, this was no mere object. This drum was a gift that could change everything. But it came with a price. By the time the first light of dawn touched the earth, Kofi had made up his mind. He would no longer hide the drum. It was time to face the reality of what the village was up against. He couldn't allow his people to suffer without giving them a chance. With a deep breath, Kofi approached the elders' gathering, where the village leaders sat in quiet deliberation. His heart pounded in his chest, his thoughts racing. They would not understand. They would accuse him of seeking power, of trying to control the fate of the village on his own. But he had to try. For their sake, for the sake of the children and the elders, he had to act. The elders looked up in surprise as Kofi stepped forward. The old chief, wise and weathered by years of leadership, raised an eyebrow at the young boy. "What is it, Kofi?" the chief asked, his voice gravelly. Kofi swallowed hard, but his voice remained steady as he spoke. "I know how we can save the village. I have found something. Something that can help us defeat King Bakari's army." The elders exchanged wary glances. "What do you speak of?" one asked. Without another word, Kofi motioned for them to follow him. He led them to the small hut where the magic drum lay hidden. When the elders saw it, their expressions shifted from confusion to awe. The drum was unlike anything they had ever seen. Its surface gleamed faintly with an ancient light, as if it had been waiting for this very moment. Kofi explained how the drum had revealed its powers to him, how it could control the elements, stop time, and even heal wounds. The elders were silent for a long moment, weighing the gravity of Kofi's words. Finally the chief spoke. "The drum is powerful, but it is dangerous. You must not use it recklessly, Kofi. You must know that magic like this can turn against you if misused. But we are left with no choice. If you truly believe it can save us, then we will place our trust in you." Kofi nodded solemnly, feeling the weight of their trust settle on his shoulders. "I will use it wisely," he promised, though in his heart, he wasn't sure if he could control the magic. But there was no turning back now. He had made his decision. The battle for his village was about to begin. The following morning, the distant sound of marching feet filled the air, growing louder with each passing minute. Kofi stood at the edge of the village, the magic drum resting at his feet. The villagers had scattered into hiding places, preparing for the worst, while the elders, though terrified, stood beside Kofi, waiting for him to make the first move. King Bakari's army was closing in, their armored soldiers casting long shadows across the land. It was a sight that would have broken the spirits of most, but not Kofi. He knew this was his moment, the moment he had been preparing for without even realizing it. The drum, though strange and powerful, was now his responsibility to wield. Kofi stepped forward, his hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of the task ahead. He had never before used the drum in such a way. The magic he had experienced in private, those small moments of wonder, had been easy to control. But this was different. The lives of his people were at stake. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and struck the drum. A deep, resonant beat echoed across the land, a sound that seemed to shake the very earth beneath their feet. The air grew thick with energy as the villagers watched, waiting for the magic to unfold. The ground trembled, and the trees surrounding the village seemed to sway as though responding to the drum's call. For a moment, everything seemed still, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Then, without warning, dark storm clouds began to swirl overhead, blocking out the sun. The wind picked up, howling through the village, and rain began to pour down in torrents, drenching the earth. The soldiers of King Bakari paused in their march, startled by the sudden change in the weather. The winds howled around them, and the rain lashed at their faces, blurring their vision. It was as though the very forces of nature had risen to protect the village. But Kofi knew this was only the beginning. He struck the drum again, this time with more force, and the ground beneath the enemy's feet began to rumble. In a flash, time seemed to freeze. The soldiers of King Bakari stood motionless, their weapons suspended mid-air. Kofi's heart pounded in his chest as he realized that the magic was working, but not in the way he had expected. For a few precious moments, everything was still, and Kofi and the villagers were free to move. The villagers scrambled, setting traps, and creating barricades to block the path of the soldiers. The enemies, frozen in time, were helpless as the villagers worked swiftly to prepare. When time resumed, chaos erupted. The soldiers found themselves caught in the snares and obstacles the villagers had set. They tried to fight back, but they were disoriented and unprepared for the village's sudden resistance. The magic of the drum had turned the tide, and though Kofi knew that he had only bought them a brief advantage, it was enough to give them hope. But the battle was far from over. King Bakari's army would not be so easily defeated, and Kofi's power over the drum was still untested. Every beat of the drum seemed to call forth new forces, but Kofi had to control it. He couldn't allow the magic to spiral out of control. As the fight raged on, Kofi realized that the drum's magic was not simply a weapon, it was a reflection of his own heart. The more he used it with compassion and courage, the stronger the magic became. But if he allowed fear, hatred, or greed to cloud his judgment, the magic could turn against him. This was a lesson he had to learn quickly, for the battle for his village was only just beginning. As the day wore on, King Bakari's army found itself pushed back, disoriented by the village's unexpected resistance. The magical storm Kofi had summoned grew fiercer, and every strike of the drum sent shockwaves through the battlefield, knocking soldiers off their feet and making it impossible for them to advance. The villagers, once weak and frightened, had become a united force, fighting with a strength they never knew they had. King Bakari's soldiers, confused and weary from the relentless assault, began to retreat, unable to withstand the power of the village's combined efforts and the magic of the drum. But the victory came at a cost. As the battle reached its climax, Kofi could feel the power of the drum beginning to wane. The magic that had flowed so easily before now felt heavier, as though the drum was warning him that its power was not limitless. With one final resounding beat, Kofi struck the drum one last time, and the storm began to dissipate, the winds dying down and the rain tapering off. The soldiers who had fled were left scattered across the fields, and King Bakari, seeing his army in shambles, ordered a retreat, vowing that he would never return to the village again. As the village slowly returned to peace, Kofi stood silently, the magic drum resting in his hands. He had won the battle, but the cost of wielding such power had left him with a new understanding of what it truly meant to be a leader. The drum, once a symbol of hope and strength, now seemed like a burden, its weight a reminder of the responsibility it carried. The villagers gathered around him, their faces filled with gratitude and awe, but Kofi's thoughts were elsewhere. He had saved his people, but he knew that magic alone would not sustain them. It was the bravery, unity, and selflessness of the villagers that had turned the tide, not just the power of the drum. In the days that followed, Kofi returned the magic drum to the forest, placing it back where he had found it. He knew that it was not meant to be used again. The lesson was clear. True strength did not come from power or magic, but from the heart. Kofi had used the drum to protect his people, but it was his courage, his willingness to fight for what was right, that had made the difference. The village would flourish once more, but now they would remember the most important lesson of all, that the greatest magic of all lay in the hearts of those who cared for one another. And so, Kofi's name became legend, not for the magic he had wielded, but for the wisdom he had gained. The village, once fearful and divided, now stood united, knowing that no force, no matter how great, could ever defeat the strength of a community bound together by love and courage.